If you are going above and beyond for everybody but yourself, this video will explain why. When most folks hear the word overcompensate, they think it means going the extra mile. The overachiever, the go-getter, the one who outworks everybody in the room. Nah, overcompensation is an unconscious defensive strategy. It's how men cover up feelings of inadequacy, shame, or a direct threat to his masculinity. Most people mistake this for being overachievers, but it's really a sign of feeling undervalued. I've paid the price of overcompensation for the majority of my life. Today I'm 57 years old, and I promise, if you ignore this story, you will likely spend decades suffering unnecessarily in love and life. Stay with me to the end, and you might just save yourself 2 decades of drama, 3 dead-end relationships, and possibly avoid wasting money trying to buy significance. This will upset a bunch of people, but men who are always going the extra mile are often operating from a threat-based state, both emotionally and neurologically. Translation: heightened sensitivity to shame, to rejection, to the slightest hint of disrespect. They overreact with anger, bravado, control tactics, flaunting status to compensate for their deep-seated sense of inferiority. Or the other end of the spectrum, they out here people-pleasing to the square root of desperation. Every bit of your above and beyond behavior is you trying to regulate an internal anxiety you can't even identify. Why? Because you've been living with that anxiety since the first time somebody convinced you that you wasn't good enough as is. But most men stay blind to this fact because a man's need to overcompensate don't show up the same way twice. It hit different in childhood, different in your teenage years, and completely different in your grown-up relationships and the roles you play in life. If you are always stalling on your own ideas, contrary to popular belief, you don't have a discipline issue. I'm Tijuana Jackson. I help people understand why they follow through keeps breaking down and what to do next. I host a live 90-minute workshop where me and Romani Malco help you identify what's interfering with your follow through so you can move your idea forward with a level of commitment you ain't never had before. You want to work with a real one? Link is in the description. If you can stomach this story, pay attention. I grew up in a house where feelings had a dress code and mine never fit. My old man was the type who loved through silence and violence. He was an affectionate dreamer when he was drunk. He was also a woman beater when he was drunk. If you cried when he was sober, he blocked you out. If you complained, he blocked you out. And if you asked for something emotional like attention, like comfort, like emotional reassurance, you got that keep playing with me look. It felt like I was just making myself smaller in the eyes of the one person I couldn't escape. Call it cap if you want to, but a report published by Equimundo on masculinity and male trauma confirmed exactly what I lived. Boys exposed to volatile households develop elevated threat sensitivity. Meaning, let's say you see a man put his hands on your mama as a kid. Your brain starts treating every moment of conflict like a potential ambush. That wasn't a study to me, that was Tuesday. By the time I was 10, I had already internalized that lesson. Asking for mercy or being vulnerable got you ridiculed or hurt. Protecting your mama from your dad's physical abuse got you resented and gaslit. But overreacting to threats, going to extremes, being willing to burn down every building on the block just to get that smoke got you left the fuck alone. Folks knew how to respect that. And that is partly how the hood teaches you to live in extremes, argue in extremes, and think in extremes. I thought I was just surviving. But see, that's the thing about overcompensation. It don't announce itself. It installs quietly and runs in the background until one day you look up and realize you've been making every major decision in your life based on a program written by a terrified child. Folks might call this imposter syndrome today, but back in my day it was called inferiority complex. I got so good at performing. School, streets, whatever room I was in, I made sure I was the most impressive thing in it, not the most honest, not the most present, the most impressive. Had nothing to do with good grades either. And nobody questioned it because in every community I moved through, that's what men were supposed to be. The standout, dominant, extra, cool, unbothered, competent, or all of the above. A study out of the University of Chicago tested this exact pattern. They told a group of men that their masculinity scores came back low. You know what happened? Them men didn't redirect or try to examine themselves. No. They overcorrected, started supporting more aggressive politics, more homophobic attitudes, more traditional gender enforcement, all to prove they was man enough. I ain't need a lab for that experiment. I ran it on myself every day for decades. By my 20s, doing extra was my entire personality and I had no idea. I was the fixer, the provider, the reliable one, who handled business, made sure everybody around me was straight, paid for every lunch. Sound noble, right? It wasn't. It was a transaction. Every favor I did, every problem I solved, every dollar I spent on somebody else was an attempt to mask how inadequate I felt. And when folks didn't show admiration, didn't choose me, or wasn't grateful, I got resentful. Didn't like me, I tried harder. If you intimidated by big words, look away. But I got this from the Center of Male Psychology. It's called compensatory narcissism. That's when a man covers deep worthlessness with generosity that ain't really generous. It's strategic. It's when your value becomes what you do for people, not who you are to people. And the second someone don't reciprocate, you devastated. Not because they hurt you. You just threatened by the idea of them seeing you the same way you see you. Not good enough. The social doormat, the inadequate one. They showed you that underneath all your doing, you don't actually believe you enough just standing there. I had added strategy. The real reason I always insisted on getting the tab was to look like I had my shit together. Mr. Big Shot cover up. I speak from experience when I say poorly placed effort will keep you in poor places. I was not an overachiever. I was just scared of rejection and abandonment, you feel me? Did I tell you about all the women? And I do mean women. Plural, because one was never enough when the whole point wasn't connection, it was confirmation. Every new woman who wanted me was evidence that I was desirable. Every conquest was a receipt that proved I wasn't the unworthy kid from that house. I wasn't making love, I was collecting reviews. Better yet, collecting data. And data don't hold you at night. Data don't heal your soul. I treated intimacy like a scoreboard and then wondered why I kept ending up with women who didn't actually know me. Well, how could they? I never stayed still long enough to be seen. I was too busy performing the version of myself I thought would keep them interested. Now would be a good time to hit that like button if you like something. And if you motivated as hell, hit that notification bell. But if you invested in seeing my channel grow, don't rely on the algorithm. The best thing you can do is share this with your folks. Pause. You may not be in a relationship right now because you are looking for the perfect woman. When you finally find the perfect woman, she probably ain't gonna let you crack because she'll be saving it for the perfect man. I spent years trying to be perfect and looking for perfect when I should have been asking myself why I couldn't tolerate being seen as imperfect. Then when I moved to one of the poorest hoods in Broward, you think that level of poverty would strip the need to overcompensate right off a man. It did the opposite. It concentrated my need to be extra like government orange juice. Every hierarchy in that hood runs on the same fuel. Dominance, status, control. Shit was embarrassing. Little broke back looking ass nigga trying to be hard. In that hood, folks would test you every day. So I doubled down on my front, got more crazy, more controlling, more strategic about who I let close and who I kept at a distance. By the time I moved out that hood, I had a PhD in emotional unavailability and had tricked myself into thinking I had finally figured out how to protect myself. What I actually figured out was how to make connection impossible. I know none of y'all gonna look this up, but it's some research I read in the National Institute of Health that describes this exact pattern. Men who never process early trauma externalize through aggression, workaholism, substance abuse, or emotional withdrawal. And here's the part that nobody tells you. People around you don't read it as pain. They read it as, he don't care. And that misread becomes the final brick in the wall because now you got a man who actually does care, buried under 30 years of armor, surrounded by people who've given up on reaching him because he made it look like there was nothing to reach. That's overcompensation's real invoice. Always needing to be extra don't just cost you relationships. It costs you the possibilities of being understood in the relationships you do manage to keep. You either own your challenges or be owned by your regrets. Pause. Folks be exposing themselves and don't even realize it. Here's how. By my 40s, I stopped chasing women and started chasing work. Same energy, different arena. Now my identity was strapped to productivity. If I was building something, launching something, grinding on something, I felt valuable. The minute things slowed down, the minute I had to just sit with myself without a project, without a performance, oh, that old feeling came back. That inadequacy, that you not enough frequency, and I'd get right back up and grind harder to drown it out. The gym, the business, the content, the hustle, all of it was medication. I just never had to fill a prescription for it because society rewards men who overwork themselves. Nobody stages an intervention for a workaholic. They give him a promotion and tell him he's an inspiration. Meanwhile, his blood pressure is playing hopscotch and his kids is calling him by his first name. I found a boring ass study from the American Psychology Association that backs this up. Men who fuse their identity entirely to one thing, whether it's a career, physical appearance, bone and females, financial status, etc., go through what psychologists call identity collapse when that one thing ain't popping no more. Retirement, job loss, injury, failure, rejection, the man don't just lose the thing, he loses himself because he never built a self outside of it. I watched that happen to men around me and still didn't recognize it in myself. That's the sophistication of overcompensation, of being too much, of always wanting to go the extra mile. It'll let you diagnose everybody else in the room except yourself. That's why my mama always say a monkey never sees his own tail, so don't be a fucking monkey. Pause. The relationship that cost me the most, the relationship I'm most ashamed of, is the one where I played the martyr. I found a woman who was chaotic, wounded, needed rescuing, and I dove in head first because fixing her made me feel significant. As long as she was broken, I had a purpose. As long as I was solving her problems, I didn't have to look at mine. If I could make her life better, I expected her to be grateful and celebrate me, hell, even worship me. But if she didn't celebrate me, wasn't always singing my praises, I panicked, took offense. This is called choosing partners who reenact early dynamics to prove worth through rescuing. I've heard a few folks call it simping. I haven't looked it up in the dictionary. I call it being a coward with a savior complex. I wasn't loving that woman. I was using her dysfunction to feel functional. And the day she figured that out was the last day she, her 3 kids, and her 3 baby daddies looked at me the same. That's what nobody tells you about the fixer. He's not generous. He's terrified. He gives and gives not because he's selfless, but because he believes the moment he stops giving, there's nothing left worth staying for. And the people around him feel it. They feel parented, not partnered. They feel managed, not loved. And eventually, they check out or continue to expect your service. And when that happens, the fixer sits there with that familiar feeling he's been running from since he was 10 years old. See, nobody stays. Nobody appreciates me. I ain't good enough. It wasn't until I started approaching my mid-50s I finally started to see it. Not all at once. Not in some dramatic revelation. It was slower than that. It was in patterns I couldn't ignore no more. I'd done the hustle. I'd done the women. I'd done the work. I'd done the fixing. I'd done the performing. I'd run out of new arenas to overcompensate in. And I was still sitting with that same feeling underneath it all. The same voice, that same kid, still asking, am I enough? After 5 decades of trying to earn an answer I should have been given for free? The deepest pain I ever had to sit with wasn't losing money, wasn't doing time, wasn't the women who walked away. It was admitting that every big move I ever made was a small boy trying to prove something that he never needed to prove. Before folks come for me, let me be clear. There's a critical difference between compensation and overcompensation. Compensation is healthy. That's let me improve, let me build a skill, let me get better at this. But when shame enters the building, that healthy drive gets hijacked. Now it ain't let me improve. Now it's I must prove I'm superior so nobody ever sees how inadequate I really feel. That's a whole different mindset running the show. Psychologically, this connects to 3 things. 1, inferiority feelings and shame. That internal voice telling you I'm not man enough, not smart enough, not attractive enough. And most men never even question that voice because it showed up before they had language to argue with it. 2, what researchers call fragile masculinity. Studies out of the University of Chicago confirm that when a man's sense of manhood gets threatened, he don't get introspective. He overcorrects, gets tougher, more aggressive, more hostile to anything that feels feminine or vulnerable. 3, compensatory narcissism. That's the grandiosity, the entitlement, the fixer role, the martyr role. All of it is covering up a feeling of deep worthlessness that you've been decorating instead of examining. Much of the stress we have comes from failing to show up for the things we show off. Pause. So now you got the science and you got my story. Let me tell you what they both add up to. To every overachiever with nothing to show for your efforts, you ain't alone. Every overcompensator eventually arrives at the same intersection. You've outworked everybody, outprovided everybody, outperformed everybody, outdid everybody, and you standing there with accomplishments stacked to the ceiling wondering why you don't feel appreciated, wondering why I feel like the floor is missing. That's not a metaphor. That's the actual neurological consequences. Research from the National Institute of Health found that men operating in a chronic threat-based state, the same state that fuels overcompensation, literally compromises their ability to bond with folks. Your brain is so busy scanning for the next attack that it can't register the person standing right in front of you trying to love you. I lost count of how many women tried, how many business partners extended trust I couldn't receive, how many moments required me to just be present, and I showed up with a performance instead, looking like a jackass. Sometimes we keep doing what we do because no one cares enough to call us on our bullshit. Pause. And that was my whole setup for decades. Every person in the room gonna say, this ain't me, but at least I admit it. I surrounded myself with situations that never demanded I go deeper than the surface because the surface was where I felt the safest. But here's what the surface costs you. Your kids grow up knowing your schedule better than your sense of humor. Your woman stops reaching for you because you built a moat around your emotions. Your boys think they know you, but they only know the version of you constructed for public consumption. And you'll sit in all of that loss and call it strength because calling it loneliness would mean the whole operation was built on a lie. All them credentials, all that potential, that's overcompensation's final bill. And it comes due whether you open the envelope or not. Dog, everything I talk about on this channel comes back to one issue: failing to follow through on what you say you want. If that's been your pattern, Romani Malco and I are hosting a 90-minute live workshop where we identify what's interfering with your follow through and connect your idea to the thing that makes it worth committing to. You want to work with a real one? Link is in the description. So what do you do when you recognize that working harder for everybody else is a lot easier than working hard for yourself? You confront the root of your overcompensating ways and stop feeding it. Here goes 6 of the many other things I had to learn. Number 1, stop proving yourself to ghosts. Most of the people you still trying to impress either forgot about you, don't care, or too busy running their own overcompensation program to notice yours. That teacher who said you wouldn't amount to nothing, that parent who made you feel invisible, that ex who walked out, you still performing for an audience that left the building years ago, maybe decades ago. The only person who needs to see your growth is you. And you can't see it if you too busy putting on a show for ghosts. Life ain't about proving yourself, it's about improving yourself. Bars, type bars in the comments if you get that. Number 2, chasing status is not a substitute for self-worth. The car, the title, that address, the watch, none of it fills the hole, it just decorates the edges. I bought things I didn't need to impress people I didn't like, to prove something I should have already known. Broke folks be the only folks willing to go more broke to look good for other broke folks. Bars, type bars in the comments if you get that. Status is a sedative. It numbs the feelings temporarily, but the feelings always come back. And when it does, you just a man with nice things who still don't believe he deserves them. Number 3, provision does not guarantee connection. Money on the table is not the same as presence in the room. Paying bills is not intimacy. Solving problems is not vulnerability. I spent years thinking I was showing up when all I was doing was showing out. My woman didn't need me to take another job. She needed me to sit down and be reachable without an agenda. My kids didn't need most stuff. They needed a father who could laugh at himself without the joke being a deflection. Providing is important, but providing without presence just makes you a vending machine with feelings nobody knows how to access. Number 4, men, listen close. Stop picking partners you can rescue and start picking partners who can bless you. It is never your job to save anyone but your children. If every woman you've been with needed saving, this ain't coincidence. That's a pattern. You're selecting dysfunctional women because their dysfunction gives you a role. And as long as you have a role, you get to be the character. You don't have to be the person. You don't have to be held accountable. You don't have to be seen. You just have to be useful. And you'll continue to be the useful, uncelebrated hero, the savior, because in your mind, dependency equates to loyalty. But in truth, being useful does not equate to being loved. Useful is tolerated until something better comes along or until something longer makes her come better. Either way, keep saving folks and you'll soon discover you ain't connected, you just convenient. Bars, type bars in the comments if you get that. Number 5, stop treating vulnerability like a liability. Every time you refuse to experience what you actually feel, you telling yourself the truth about you ain't safe. Do that enough times and you'll believe it. Then you build a whole life around protecting a lie. I know men who ain't told another human being how they feel in 20, 30 years. Not they woman, not they homies, not the therapist. They just keep moving, keep performing, keep overcompensating, and they wonder why nobody knows them. They be all up in my online program talking about nobody understands me. Negro, don't nobody understand you because you never let nobody in. Then, when they finally get around to expressing how they feel, it's toxic, counterproductive, and usually out of anger. Women do it too. Vulnerability ain't weakness. It's the door that intimacy walks through. Type bars in the comments if you get that. You lock that door, you lock yourself in isolation. And isolation ain't strength, it's a sentence. Bars. Number 6, please stop waiting until you in a crisis to start examining anything. I'm in my late 50s. It took me half a century to see what was running in the background the whole time. Don't let it take you that long. You don't need to hit rock bottom to start building something real. You just need to get honest before the invoice gets any bigger. The crazy thing about death is you don't have to stop breathing to experience it. Type bars in the comments if you get that. I was dead for years, walking around, working, talking, performing, but I had flatlined emotionally. It was as if my pulse disappeared. And when I finally hit rock bottom, the only two who stood by my side was my stubbornness and my pride. Bars! Somebody type bars in the comments if you get that. If your goal is to make the most out of this life, I need you to focus your attention on this video right here.